And another slide doesn't have on here, but China is also getting into the offshore wind business as well. So you have the regions Lloyd talked about, with the European Union, China, already getting into these markets, and the United States a little lagging behind. And the reason why, though, this is a great booster for clean energy jobs is that these are large-scale materials. This doesn't really get a sense of scale here, but offshore wind farms are actually, the turbines themselves are around 400 feet tall. There are 8,000 component parts that go into each one. So they take a lot of resources and create a lot of jobs. This slide here, is that a laser?
Yeah, right in the center.
Oh no!
Wow.
Sorry.
Right in the center.
Perfect. I actually have been following directions. So, we've mainly seen wind in the center of the country. If anyone's ever driven through the Midwest and seen onshore wind farms, they've existed. Texas is actually the world's largest producer of onshore wind. But if you can tell, the graph is a little hard to read since it's pretty small. But the colors, this is actually not the strongest wind we have in the country. It lies on our coasts. And North Carolina, actually, you can see with the dark red here, is, on the East Coast, the largest potential for offshore wind in the entire country. Or excuse me, at least on the East Coast. And this graph here, I guess my little red bar kind of scooted off to the side here, but this represents the overall potential for North Carolina. This is 140 gigawatts of energy. That's multiple times over what North Carolina as a state uses. I think as of 2007, we used around 30 gigawatts for our state. So this is multiple times over the amount of energy. So North Carolina has an enormous potential just in strict resources. These are the other East Coast states, South Carolina you can see, and then it dips down going here. These are some of the areas we're looking at right now, and North Carolina has places for offshore wind in blocks for companies to actually come in and lease. So your main areas, you have Raleigh Bay and Onslow Bay, some down in this region as well. The darker colors are better efficiency, and these lines pertain to distance offshore. This is kind of looking at around 20 to 30 miles offshore, so these are further out into the ocean. These aren't, people have heard of the Cape Wind project. It took 9 years to permit up in Boston and Nantucket region. A lot of that was to do with some of the aesthetic reasons because they were putting them much closer to the shore. North Carolina, we're looking to mitigate a lot of those problems and place them further off. Now, this is getting to the fun part of the discussion, where we are in the process at the federal level, because these are federal waters we're talking about. State waters only extend 3 miles off the coast. Past that is federal waters, and then that's up to 50 nautical miles. So right now, there's been a state task force that's been formed from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which was rebranded from the Minerals Management Service. Some more acronyms for everyone to memorize. And I believe actually at their first meeting in Wilmington, they were the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management Regulation and Enforcement. Now they're BOEM, so they change constantly. But this task force was formed of federal, state, local, and tribal officials to actually look at the areas off North Carolina's coast to identify leasing blocks and find the most suitable areas where we can actually put large-scale wind turbines off our coast. So we're in this process right here. So very soon after the first step, afterwards, once those areas get identified, there are RFIs, and then the leasing process kind of ensues after that. So we're a little bit behind some other states, and I'll talk about that right now. You can see here, these are some of the states all ahead of us in the process in terms of policy and bringing their state in offshore wind. Because the big driver, and we've talked about this, is there's an issue about demand. There's an issue about the cost effectiveness. But our state, like a lot of these other states, has a renewable energy standard, which North Carolina is actually the only state in the South to have one. That means 12.5% of our electricity has to come from renewable energy sources by 2021. So there is somewhat of a mandate for renewable energy in our state. What some states have done within that, I can speak to New Jersey, they've actually created what's called a carve-out for their offshore wind industry. So this is done through the legislature. They've actually passed policy showing that they have to get 1,000 megawatts from offshore wind. So creating a stable system so industry knows that they can come here and that they have to create this industry. So that's something New Jersey's done. Maryland is currently proposing a power purchase agreement. Their governor has set this up, so creating a fixed price between utilities and the developers of offshore wind farms over a 20-year period, setting a stable price. So while fossil fuel prices, with their volatility and just to the nature are going to continue, you can create a power purchasing agreement and have the price stabilize over a 20-year period. So those are different policy mechanisms that other states are doing, and nothing's happening in North Carolina right now. This is a little slide about job creation, and it's a kind of small to see some of these numbers here, but this is all coming from the National Renewable Energy Lab and some other resources which I can forward out to folks if anyone has any questions to ask me afterwards. Talking about the jobs that are created both in the short term and the long term, because these are all good paying jobs, both from the construction side of things and the longer term potential. So there's a great aspect of North Carolina utilizing their resources and bringing jobs to the southeast region and all along the coast. Because the idea is that manufacturing facilities follow the supply chain. Like I said before, these structures are large, 400 feet, blades, about 300 or 400 feet in diameter, and all the components that go into them. So almost by necessity, they have to be constructed near their source of where they're being erected. So right now there's a big push to attract manufacturing and manufacturing industries to coastal areas and to the coastal states to bring about all of those jobs in that industry here. So not only you would be attracting all the intellectual folks coming to serve as kind of the after the construction is built, but you can be bringing construction jobs in that whole industry. So that's what this graph or this chart showed. And this is kind of set up, maybe not necessarily for this group to talk about, but I've given somewhat a similar presentation to a lot of town councils over the last couple of months. But people are wondering about tourism and how that is how it will affect. This slide, if you see the little dots in the background, this is a projection that the University of Delaware did along their coast at about 13 miles. So that's what it could look like on a very clear day in terms of creating wind farms out the coast. And they also did a study showing that the rate of acceptance between tourists and local coastal residents on offshore wind farms is around 95% after they're placed more than 7 to 10 miles off the coast. So this was something I think Lloyd mentioned about addressing the issue of tourism v. business, and I don't think they have to necessarily compete. There are actually studies done from Stockholm that this is a great boon for recreational fishing industries, because these are hard structures out in the ocean. You can create artificial reefs. So recreational fishing industry is actually really interested in offshore wind. And then at the same time, I've actually read some reports of charter captains chartering boat tours out to the wind farms as kind of a tourist attraction. So there are ways that there can be a synergy between those two. You don't have to compete. This is kind of going off of what we discussed before. On the energy generation side, wind is definitely at the forefront of kind of the Cleantech movement. It's one of the largest burgeoning fields in the renewable energy sector. Offshore wind is kind of that next step for the United States, and it's very exciting to be a part of. And we are first in flight in North Carolina. We also can be first in wind. Maybe not in the sense of putting up the first wind turbine, but we do have the largest potential. We have great human capital as well. I know there's some students at the Sustainability Tech program here in the audience, and also the professor here at the Cape Fear Community College doing a lot of work in this field. So there's the human capital we have here. We can have the base. Actually, there's more information, more slides. I want to kind of abbreviate it, but you can talk to me afterwards about why North Carolina could attract this manufacturing industry here. So we can be the first in wind, but we really will need that forward-thinking policy, and that's why right now is a very important time at the state legislature to make sure that we create those policy demands for North Carolina and that we can actually attract that industry here so we don't lose out to Rhode Island or Delaware or New Jersey. Because once the industry kind of sets up in terms of manufacturing, they're not going to put one in each state. So we want to really show North Carolina has that potential. And it's really exciting to be working on this from my perspective, because as an environmental conservation group, we're usually the ones saying no to the business community. But we see this as a way to work with investments, to work with renewable energy, and really find a place for offshore wind in the United States and here in North Carolina. That's it.
So next up is John Donahue from Cape Fear Solar Systems.
John Donahue. I work with Cape Fear Solar Systems. I want to say thank you to Lloyd and the Economic Development Council for allowing us to come here and present tonight. What we're going to do is talk about solar power, what we've seen over the last couple of years, and where we see it going, and use some real-life examples focusing on economics of the solar industry and how we see it in our business, in our current business. North Carolina is considered to be an underdeveloped solar market. And what we have across the country is we have states like California, New York, and New Jersey that through what are higher electric rates, the economics of the systems are different. They also have very healthy rebate and incentive markets coming from the utilities and the input from the local government officials. So where they are right now, they've gone by or past the early adopters and have moved into early majority where there's a much wider acceptance. We see hesitation here in North Carolina, not just from the economics, but also from the general acceptance of it. Whereas California, New York, New Jersey, down in Florida, you fly into those airports, if you look out the window, you can see solar systems on a very large number of homes. So a lot of the, oh, you know, am I taking a big risk here, has been taken away. And what we're doing right now, in most of the installations we're currently doing, we're the first in a particular neighborhood. So we battle with the homeowners association. You know, there's a lot of nervousness on the part of the homeowner. Is it really going to look okay? They've seen pictures and images of systems from the 70s and 80s and these contorted contraptions on roofs. So there's a lot of concern what it's going to do to their property values. The rest of the country is moving into mass market. There's been comments from some of the other presenters about things going on in Europe. Europeans they have a more robust and a more advanced solar energy market than the United States does. They also have much higher energy rates. My colleague Linda from the Czech Republic, they're paying 56 cents a kilowatt hour. We pay 9.6 cents here in North Carolina. California is paying up to 22, and it is higher in the other states. So there's other economic pressures that we don't necessarily feel here. And when you look at where we are in North Carolina, we're still at the early adopter stage. We have pockets in the state of North Carolina, primarily in Research Triangle, Raleigh-Durham area, and in Charlotte, Asheville, where if you look at a map of solar installations in North Carolina, you're going to see large concentration. For North Carolina, the concentration will be there. It's starting to pop up in southeastern North Carolina. But as I'll go into it a little bit more, a lot of it has to do with the education, what we're doing tonight, and speaking to people, and I'll go through some examples. So we're still at the early adopter stage, and a lot of the people that approach us are coming to us because they've decided it's the right thing for them to do. They're building a new house, they want to put it on, they have disposable income. And we haven't moved into the early majority stage yet, but we're getting there. What we've identified, and I was saying to Scott earlier, there are basically 5 groups of people we've identified. We have the global warming folks, we have the clean air folks, which they are 2 distinctly different groups. We have the gadget folks, they want the plasma screen or the stainless steel refrigerator. We have the keeping up with the Joneses, and then we have I want to save money. And the I want to save money as a primary function, or as a primary consideration, exists to some degree with the other 4. So what we have taken as an approach to our business is we want to show people how it will make economic sense for them. Because if it makes economic sense for that particular installation, no matter what group they find themselves in, they're going to be able to check the box that it meets my needs.